on CKNW News Talk 980. Once again, here's Sean Leslie.
Oh, a little live Hendrix there. I wonder if that's from Woodstock. Dale writes me, says, Ujjal Dosanjh, a failed NDP hack who helped destroy BC in the 90s, now wants to save us from ourselves. Last January, the coalition of the unwilling wanted to spend us to prosperity. Now they're complaining about the deficit. Strange. If the Libs were in power, they'd be following the lead of the extreme left in the U.S., creating massive debt and a permanent depression. That from Dale, and I'm at Leslie@cknw.com if you want to drop me a line. My guest is James Moore, the Conservative MP for Port Coquitlam, and I welcome your calls. Let's go to the phone lines. Casey's on the line. Hi, Casey.
Good afternoon. You know, the interesting thing is the last caller did say it, you know, and the left is ideologically asking them to spend on every conceivable program. Then they complain about the debt they run up. But, you know, you look at just another example, and I think to some degree, Quebec kind of corrupts politics in Canada. You know, you look at the interprovincial transfers outside of health. They garnered over 50% of interprovincial transfers. And as an industry that's represented nationally by a committee that I sit on, I look at their public policy, and they're never going to attract investment. So their public policy is stopping investment into their province. So they wind up in a have-not position. So they suck on the rest of us because they use this interprovincial transfer to buy votes to keep themselves in power. And I think that's dishonest. You know, and predominantly the West has been sort of feeding the cow. They've been milking it in the East. And I think it's just politics in Canada is so corrupted, and here we've got some guys trying to be accountable and responsible, and people are vilifying these guys. It's incredible.
All right, Casey. James Moore, any comment on that? Does the Quebec influence distort the Canadian political world?
Well, I mean, look, Quebec has 1 in 4 seats in the House of Commons, so obviously they're going to be a strong voice, and they have this sort of constant threat of separation, which makes it even more puzzling why a supposedly federalist, nationalist political party, historically in the Liberal Party, would get in bed and sign a contract to give cabinet seats to the Bloc Québécois, who only want to destroy the country and only want to have a massive imbalance in spending and power going to the province of Quebec that in the long term will only lead to the destruction of Canada. What we need is to have a truly Western Prime Minister that will stand up for the West, that will defend British Columbia's interests. That's what's in the interest of my constituents, is to have that person and to have strong members of Parliament and members of Cabinet from British Columbia that will stand up and defend the West.
Fred is on the line. Hi, Fred.
A great show today, guys.
Thanks.
The last person that just spoke there hit the nail on the head, because when the election was over, DeSep says, well, you know what? I didn't want to give Harper the majority because I want to keep him on a short leash so I can have control of the money that goes to Quebec. But what really annoys me, and he said that because I saw it, and the thing that really annoys me about Dosanjh, he pulls the race card like this guy's clueless. That's just going to make me and a whole lot of other people vote Conservative in the next election, for sure. And number 3, another point that I want to make is that this entitlement party that the Liberals call themselves now, I think is just a joke. Thank you.
Fred, thanks for that. James Moore, let me ask you this, and Ujjal Dosanjh did talk about this, and there is this perception that Canadians of a non-white skin color, if we can put it that way, who find themselves in trouble, whether in their countries of origin or simply in other countries, do not get the support from this Conservative government in terms of either getting back to Canada or getting help overseas that they should. I mean, how do you respond to that?
As I was incredibly cynical, incredibly cheap, and entirely dishonest. That basically sums it up. We do it. Our foreign service does a brilliant job of defending Canadians around the world. Our government's policies are very clear. Of course, we stand up and defend Canadians abroad, and we make Canadians whose rights are protected around the world. Obviously, the situation with Omar Khadr is very distinct and very different from all the others, and for any politician to try to use that as an example to try to leverage and wedge and play a race card, I think is cheap and ugly and unnecessary. The Conservative government, our party, is the most ethnically diverse political party in the Commons. We have more Canadians from more backgrounds and more diversity than any political party in Canada. And for somebody to try to play that card, I think shows how desperate the Liberals are.
280-9898. Bruce. Hi, Bruce. Go ahead, sir.
Hi there. I got a mixed comment about the economy, but first I have to say, when somebody talks about cynical and dishonest, after just having said that the document was signed to give the Bloc Québécois cabinet seats, when Mr. Moore knows absolutely that they agreed to support that coalition, they were not going to be part of the cabinet. That
Correct.
Was an absolute
I should have caught that. Thank you, Bruce.
He said that directly. I mean, you want to talk cynicism and dishonesty, there it is for you. But more important than that, I think, you look back at the economy here. The stimulus money that has gone out, that has, and I would ask Mr. Moore to tell me one project in British Columbia that actually has been funded, certainly in the Lower Mainland. I know of some in Ontario and Quebec. But if they had not been forced into the situation, they would not have done the stimulus spending that every other major country in the world has put forward. They were forced into that circumstance. And I would ask you to tell me when, in this century or last century, the Conservatives ever presided over an economy that was robust and good. You go back to Borden. You go back to Diefenbaker. You go back to Mulroney. You go back to Harper, except for the first 2 years of this particular government.
Except for our first mandate.
Where is the time?
Well, and you can also make the argument that Mulroney did bring in the GST, which undid his political career, but did lay the foundation for some of the liberal economic success. But go ahead, James Moore, you can do that better than I can.
Well, easily. Look, the coalition with the Bloc Québécois absolutely would have been at the mercy and the power of Gilles Duceppe and the Bloc Québécois. There's no question about that. And if you don't think for 1 second that Gilles Duceppe would have demanded cabinet seats in order to sustain the coalition over time, you're fooling yourself. Of course they would. And there was also clear discussion, open public discussion about having permanent separatist Bloc Québécois senators in the Senate of Canada. That doesn't serve Canada's interest. You say that Conservatives haven't presided over strong economic growth, and then you just very quickly debunk your own arguments by saying, except for the first 2 or 3 years of the Conservative government. Of course we have. Free trade, which is a Conservative legacy, is the foundation of Canada's economy. 1 in 4 Canadians is dependent on trade, on a free trade deal that Conservatives negotiated and brought in, and is absolutely serving the best interest of Canada, the best interest of British Columbia. It's a program, a policy that the Liberals voted against, campaigned against, and then embraced in government. Same with the GST, Conservatives have always stood up for the robust, strong, healthy economic policies. With regard to infrastructure spending, I can give you a very long list of projects across British Columbia. I just look at my own backyard here in the Tri-Cities, East Road and more. The projects out here at the Port Coquitlam Rec Center, the Evergreen SkyTrain extension, we put $416 million on the table to make sure that gets built ahead of schedule as effectively as possible, as long as Translate comes to the table. We have projects across the province, across the country that are getting money right now. Be glad to give you a very long list. Go to the Transport Department's website. They're all enumerated there one by one, telling you exactly what we've done for Canadians.
James Moore, good to have you on the show. Thanks for your time.
Mine.
MP for Port Moody, Coquitlam, Port Coquitlam, James Moore. We're going to take a break. We'll change it up. We'll get away from